Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Unfair Advantage podcast. Today, we have a powerful conversation lined up with Mr. James Dunn, who is a mindset coach who is passionate about helping early entrepreneurs overcome their inner obstacles. James brings a unique perspective to coaching, having faced his own share of personal battles from growing up in a challenging environment to turning his life around after an arrest at the age of 17. Now he uses his experiences to empower others to silence that inner voice of doubt and fear and become unstoppable in their entrepreneurial journey. Get ready for a inspiring conversation about mindset shifts and the importance of surrounding yourself with a supportive community. But before we do, let's not forget that today's episode is sponsored by Screaming Cow Marketing Group. We are number one home service marketing agency that helps home service businesses around the U.S. get more leads through utterly unforgettable marketing experiences. So if you're busy looking for more of the right work to do, you can call the guys who move. James, welcome on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be
Yeah,
here.
absolutely, absolutely. So I obviously kind of highlighted a little bit in your intro, but I always say it's best for the guests to kind of introduce themselves, like who they are, what they do, and kind of how they got down the path of being a entrepreneur, because everybody's journey is a little bit different.
Yeah, no. So because you always, like, anytime you pop on a show, they're always like, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. And so what I usually like to
Yeah.
do is just share with you, do a lot of little networking things and my little elevator pitch. We've all got our elevator pitch. So I'll share that with you and then kind of elaborate on it a little bit and be open to any questions that you have. So,
Yeah.
hello, everybody. My name is James Dunn. I was adopted. I grew up in a household with an alcoholic father, and I was arrested for attempted armed robbery when I was 17 years old. So, why am I sharing that with you in this podcast here today? Well, because while you may not have gone through any one of those specific set of circumstances yourself, you've gone through your own version of them. Could be a loss of a job, might have got a divorce, maybe somebody picked on you as a kid. Something has happened in your life. It's created this little voice in the back of your head, makes you doubt yourself, question yourself, and what you're truly capable of. And what I do as a mindset coach is I help you teach that little voice to shut the fuck up, get out of your own way, and move from unsure to unstoppable. So that's really me in a nutshell, like the highlights. I mean, there's a lot of other crazy things that have happened in my life, but that gives you at least a little bit of an idea of some of the challenges I had,
Yeah.
growing up. That I now, like you talk about the unfair advantage. Now I look at them as beautiful blessings. At the time I
Hmm.
definitely didn't see that, but I can look back now and see how it's given me so many amazing attributes in life that help me on a daily basis that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that I've had all kinds of people on this podcast, and I think you're the first one that I have had that has been adopted. I could be wrong there, but I've had a few who have grown up with parents who were alcoholics or became alcoholics themselves and had to like undo that journey and everything. And I've talked through a lot of those things, but um at at what age were you adopted?
So I was adopted, I believe, at 6 months. I
Okay.
didn't know about it myself until somewhere around age 6 or 7, somewhere
Okay.
there.
Okay. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. As you said, it was around 6 months. So it's a lot of times I see those who are adopted, like sometimes they don't find out till like they're in their teens or later on, which is a whole different set of battles and everything like that. So in a way, I imagine looking back, you're probably glad that you found out at the age you did rather than later on in life.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those weird things where obviously I didn't know about it when it happened because I was way too young. But
Hmm.
then I don't remember much about it other than my dad and I being out on a fishing boat. He was huge into fishing. We were out fishing one day and he just happened to just kind of toss it out there, and I don't remember exactly the words, but it's like they always say, you
Yeah.
don't remember what people say, that you remember how they made you feel. And I remember that stomach, clenching tightness, just like, what? Just like my
Yeah.
whole world's kind of turned upside down here. And thankfully it wasn't like something that affected me a whole lot. I've never made it a point to try and track down my biological parents. I don't care where they're at. Don't really care too much about the story. The only thing that kind of sucks is every time you go into the doctor, for your medical history, like, hey, do you need history? Is I don't know, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but outside of that, it doesn't really. matter a lot to me. Um, and the only time it would really even mess with my head was I'm 6 foot tall. My dad and my mom, my adoptive parents, who are my parents, how I look at it, they're both like 5 foot, 5'1". So, when there's a foot difference between you and your parents,
Yeah.
as kids, sometimes like, how the hell you get so damn tall, And in the back of my head, I know,
Yeah.
but outwardly, yep, just made that way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like I see I don't watch TV often, but like I've seen quite a few like TV shows or series in a way where like the kid who's adopted like is always trying to figure out like and meet their adoptive parents and wanting to connect with them and all of those things. Is there like at one point did you have that desire to go down that path, or was it just never something you ever had this like ambition to go and do?
No, never really have. And I was even contacted. I wasn't directly contacted, but my mom was contacted probably when I was maybe 18, 19, 20, somewhere right in that range. I remember right after high school, I believe it was, she got contacted. And so I believe I have a half brother out there floating around somewhere
Okay.
that was looking for me. And I was like, no, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you want to know more, but I really don't want to
Mm-hmm.
open that door.
Yeah.
And I just, the only time I would like, as I've gotten older and older, I've thought about it a little bit. And my dad passed away like 25 years ago. My mom she'll be 80 this year. And after she passes, would there be a possibility that I might consider looking up, seeing what's going on, with that history and everything? Maybe. But
Yeah.
as long as my adoptive mother is alive, she is my mom. And I would never want
Mm-hmm.
anything to infringe on that relationship that,
Yeah.
cause any kind of weird dynamic with anything like that. And it would be just out of curiosity. It's not like I feel like there's an empty part of me,
Mm-hmm.
that I need to figure out, why did this happen? Why did you put me up for adoption? Just like, I'm just be curious. So
Yeah.
maybe someday, but definitely no driving force.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's interesting, and I as you were talking, I was thinking to myself like I would probably want to know,
Mhm.
but it also goes. I'm almost gonna like bring this into like your coaching and everything. Like a lot of that is those inner thoughts and everything. Like I've just like always been in my head about a lot of things, and it's like that's just thinking about it, like, that's something that I would wanna know. It's a lot of, like, the inner work that I have to do as a person because, like, I've not gone through that, but if I'm thinking to myself, if I would've, like, I would wanna know just based off, like, what I've gone through in my life and everything. So I'm sure a lot of it just has to do with the
Yeah.
mindset and, like, the positive mindset that you are in about the life you have, the life you lived, and the life you are going to continue to live.
Yeah. Because there's definitely things where going through my dad's alcoholism, and thinking to
Mhm.
myself, well, why, what's this crap? Why do we got to deal with this? Maybe if I wasn't adopted, I wouldn't have to deal with that. Uh, but I made peace with a lot of that stuff a long time ago. And how I
Okay.
look at the adoption now, where somebody might be adopted, they might think if they just focused on that initial situation and they focused on it, what I would consider from a poor perspective of, oh my gosh, somebody didn't love me, so they just
Yeah.
kicked me to the curb and they said, here, you take me, I don't want you in my house, whatever. I look at it now that I was doubly loved, so I could easily not be here right now. I mean, my biological mother could have easily aborted me. I mean, it wasn't as readily available. It wasn't, I don't want to say it's as common as it is now, but it
Yeah.
was something that, she still could have aborted me, but she chose to go ahead, carry me full term. I don't know, what happened with my biological father, if they were
Yeah.
together, it was a joint decision, it was just her decision. But whatever it was, she carried me to full term and then gave me up for adoption. So this person out there loved me enough to say, hey, I can't give you the life that you deserve. So I'm
Mhm.
going to allow somebody else to potentially give you that life.
Yeah.
And then that's where my biological parents stepped in when I was 6 months old. They said, hey, we want to give a young child a life and love them and raise them and take care of them. So I actually am more loved than somebody who had biological parents, because sometimes that comes along. You just have a kid, it's like, oh shit, we got a kid. Damn, now we got to raise them. You know?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things like, it is sometimes just as needed for the adoptive parents as it is for the adoptive child. Like I know of
Yeah.
somebody in relation to our family that like um, eh, they have now adopted two boys, and it's like knowing what they've gone through and on both sides, both these boys and what the parents have gone through, it's like they needed each other like equally as much. And so
Yeah.
like you look at like some of the journey and everything that they went through, and it was like the timing of this adoption just seems so perfect. And the years leading up to that, I'm sure did not seem perfect to them, but now looking back, like hindsight's always 2020, they say like it it just seems so perfect for them. And so um uh, anybody who's listening, and I'm sure James, you can definitely talk on this a little bit more, but it's like you, don't look at the journey you're going through and think of like, this is crap, or this is, I wish I wasn't going down this path or that path or whatever. Like sometimes there's a bigger plan in place, and it may be 6 months from now, it may be 6 years from now, it may be 30 years from now. We don't know, but there's always a bigger picture and a better plan in place for us.
Yeah, there's everything, and I think it, like I say, it leads to or leans to what your podcast is all about. It's like these things,
Yeah.
these challenges, these struggles we go through. At the time, we think they suck, and they do suck. I
Mhm.
mean, we're not going to
Yeah.
deny that. But when we can remove ourselves from them a little bit, get a little more distance from that particular event, then we can look back and say, "Oh, wait a minute, this is how that helps me so much." Because
Yep.
with my dad's alcoholism, one of the things I had to deal with him was he would come home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk out of his mind, screaming, yelling, just causing all kinds of chaos in the house when everybody's trying to sleep. And there was me and my younger brother, who was 2 years younger than me, and my mom. And I felt like I needed to be the man of the house and kind of buffer things for my mom and my brother, So I was the one. I would get up out of bed, I would go deal with him, and basically I would sit there and listen to him just ramble on, talk, do whatever, and just try and get him calmed down until we would pass out and we could all finally go to sleep. What that taught me
Hmm.
now, I can see, is a lot of patience. The ability to sit there and listen to people and read their emotions and understand a lot more of what they were going through and how not to manipulate them, but to have that empathy, or like say pick up a lot of those feelings that other people wouldn't necessarily be able to feel or connect with.
Yeah.
So at the time, yes, that sucked. Listen to this dude just ramble on for 3 hours, until the sun's coming. I'm like, just shut the fuck up, pass out on the floor so I can go to bed. But
Yep.
now I'm like, okay, that's great, because that helped me again become a much more receptive, understanding person. And
Hmm.
so I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, yeah. I've you and I are friends on Facebook and in a different like mastermind or coaching community together, and so I'm sure you've seen a few of my posts. But I've been kind of toying with this idea of like the power of a pause, and what that actually comes from is that is a technique that people who stutter use as they pause, and it kind of gives them that moment or that breath of air or whatever to then get out the word or whatever that they know they're going to have trouble with or always have trouble with. And so I've kind of correlated that back to business and life and everything. And it's like that has given me the ability to like sit and listen, and that type of things with people is to like having that moment of pause. And it sounds like that's like in the moment there was all this chaos, but over time it allowed you to just kind of pause and reflect on like what's going on in your life, and the possibly even the man you wanted to become, like looking back as to like when you're going through that. And so it's important as to like how much people emphasize like just taking a moment to pause and like and reflect deeply on like what's going on in their lives.
Yeah. I think we get so caught up in feeling like there has to be something 24/7. It's got to be go, 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 go.
Hmm.
And social media feeds into that so bad. If we
Yeah.
have half a second, we got to check my email. I got to check my Facebook. I got to check Instagram. And I was even recording an episode of my podcast this morning, and I made a comment about that like nowadays I'm being much more conscious of, like in the mornings I have, my daughter, I'm getting her ready for school, and I'll find like a 5-minute window where I've got this thing done and I've got 5 more minutes until that next thing needs to be done. And used to, you would like grab the phone or like, well, let me go rush and do this real quick. And now I literally just sit and just like breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I give myself
Yep.
that pause, and just taking that pause, it changes your whole perspective on life, because then you don't feel so rushed anymore. You have time to let your brain catch up and like just think about things for a minute and not feel like it's just go, 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 go 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge culprit of that, and it's been like a lesson I've been trying to like train myself over the last couple of months. It was like if things weren't busy in the business and I like had everything I needed to do or this or that, like there's always things you can like figure out how to do in your business. Always keep yourself busy in that sense. But then I would like turn around and if I didn't have something that I wanted to do or couldn't focus on with the business, then I would go and do something and try to do some sort of repair or remodel around the house or whatever, where we had like all these freaking projects going on at once because I had this in a way like ADD and it was like, okay, I got this going on, this going on, this going on. It was because I was just trying to fill in those gaps of these moments. Where then indirect to what that causes all of this like subconscious like panic and stress for me of like, I got all this shit going on. I don't have enough time to do it and this and that. Where like right before we hopped on here, like I had about 15 minutes and like I just like I walked out of my office and my dogs were on the couch and I'm like, I'm gonna sit here for 15 minutes and just hang out with the dogs. And it's like old
Yeah,
me 6 months ago would have been
it's
like,
a
all right,
game changer,
I
man.
got 15 minutes. Let me try to cram this in, cram that in. And I'm by no means perfect, but I am much better than I was 6 months ago with it.
Well,
So
it's just
awesome.
having that
Well, hey James,
awareness.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's just like having that awareness and then making it a point to try and give yourself that space more and more often. And something I share with people a lot of times is, if you really stop to think about it, say you had a magic wand and I asked you first, to sit down in the morning, write down 10 of the most important things you need to get done today. You write down your list, you wave that magic wand, you get all 10 of them done. Okay, tomorrow I ask you to sit down, write down 10. Can you do that again? Sure, you can write 10 more things you need to get done. Magic wand, they all get done. Next day, can you do 10 more? Yep, you can write. You can do that every freaking day for the rest of your life and still find something. You could even bump that list up to 100. You could find 100 things you could write down
Mm-hmm.
that you need to get done today. And if it all got done, you could still
Yep.
tomorrow write a brand new list of 100. So stop.
Yep.
Just freaking breathe. You're never going to get it all done. Just give yourself a little bit of space and say, you know
Yep.
what? Let me just focus on 2 or 3 things that are really important and let the rest of it fall off, because most of it's not nearly as important as we make it out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's I was as you were talking, I was thinking about like we talked about you going through adoption and like growing up being adopted and then your father and alcoholism and everything like that. We haven't touched yet is you were arrested at 17, right? And I think you and I were
Yeah.
talking before we hopped on. You have a daughter now who is almost that age. And so like if you think about it, like the age she's at now, like that's about the age that you went through some of this. And based off the conversations you and I had, like she is not headed down not headed down that path. But if you don't mind, like why don't you share
No.
like a little bit as to what
Yeah.
went
It's
into that and and like how is that kind of a life changing or life altering moment for you? Because based off what I've kind of heard and what we've talked about a little bit, it seems like that was kind of the turning point for you to kind of get back on track.
so, yeah. So for me, it's, yeah, she is on a completely different path than I'm on. And it is really crazy to stop and think about where I was at in my life at her age, and where she's at in her life. Because, yeah, I was already drinking and partying and doing all kinds of stupid things and shoplifting and everything. And she couldn't be any further away from any of that. So uh, it's one of those things where I think a big piece of the difference is, and I'm not going to knock my parents, but they didn't emotionally know how to handle a lot of things or how to have conversations. Like my parents, like most
Yeah.
of our parents, grew up in a completely different generation where you don't talk about your feelings, you don't talk about your emotions. They didn't really express love. There was almost no hugging, anything like that. And so with my daughter specifically, there's been a whole different way of relating to her, always being very vocal and sharing, thoughts and emotions and having conversations. I'm like, hey, how did that make you feel? Hey, what are you thinking about this? And really getting kind of to the root of things and making it much more open, so if she does have a challenge, she does have a struggle, she can talk to me about it. We can share those kinds of things
Hmm.
and just letting her know where I have my own faults, where as my dad would get mad and yell at me about something and then it would just be whatever. And also, I grew up in a generation where if you did something wrong, you got your ass whooped, with a belt or a switch or whatever happened to be close by. None of that in my household. And no, again, no fault to my parents because that was just the generation. That's how we did things. But um, like even I remember very vividly one time my daughter, I forgot what was going on, but I kind of snapped at her about something. I kind of got mad and I didn't completely yell at her, but I definitely raised my voice and was not
Hmm.
speaking to her in a very polite tone. And this isn't like you can't ever discipline your kids, you can't ever have a harsh conversation with them, but it just wasn't the right way to do it. And I recognized it
Right.
very quickly. And I went back to her afterwards and I said, hey, I just want you to understand nobody should ever talk to you that way, not even me. Okay. No man, no woman, nobody should ever talk to you that way. And I apologize. It's like I am your parents, and there are things that I do need to set down ground rules and help you understand things, but I didn't need to do it that way. And so I think there's
Hmm.
just a lot of conversations like that we've had over the years that help her see, hey, dad's human too. He understands me as a human. And yes, he's still dad. We can be friends, but he's still dad. He's still going to make
Yeah.
sure that he's, looking out for my best interests and giving me that space. And another conversation she and I had here very recently was and this was one of those very proud dad moments where I almost had a little tear in my eye, because I forgot how we got onto the subject specifically, but she said, thank you for letting me fail, which may seem like a weird thing for her to say. But what it is I've raised her, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before the call, with her grades. I've raised her where I give her enough space to fail. I always tell her, I'm never going to let
Hmm.
you hurt yourself permanently. I'm never going to let you do anything that's going to damage your life forever, or kill you or anything like that. But outside of that, I'm going to let you screw things up in life because I would rather you do it now while we're here together and you and I can talk about it directly on a daily basis. And I can kind
Yeah.
of help guide you, maybe to where you want to be versus me trying to dictate your life for you or tell you how you should do this and don't do this and put up the cushioned walls on everything. And then suddenly when you're 18 or whenever you decide to spread your wings and leave the house, then suddenly you're making all your mistakes. And you're like, whoa, crap. Now, wait, I'm out here on my own and suddenly I have no money or suddenly I've done this horrible thing. Like, no, learn it
Yep.
now while you're
Yep.
young. And so, yeah, she thanks me for allowing her that space to fail. And she even says, like, that's the best way to learn. I'm like, I'm done, man. I'm good. I can go die now because my kid understands that
Yeah.
failure is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and that's how you learn in life. It's just by trying things and failing and learning and moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like there's a few people I know that like my my wife and I have conversations and we're like, this person was so sheltered as a kid. And it
Mhm.
was like and it's like they had no opportunity to fail. Their parents kind of like kept them in this box and that like everything on the outside in the real world was like roses when when it's not. And so what it sounds like to me is that you did the exact opposite. You're like, hey, like this is life, and I want you to learn on your own. I'll be here to pick you up when you need me to pick you up, but I'm gonna let you fail to the point where it's like I'm gonna pick you up whenever you least expect it, not when you expect it in a way.
Yeah. Like, another example of that is like her money. She'll get money for birthdays and different things and she's into certain collectibles and things like that. And this isn't exactly one, but this is a little thing that she got me, so like little things like this, I'm a big huge Kiss
Hmm.
fan, but she's into like Japanese culture and things like that. And there were some of these figures that she was buying that were like $60, $70. And I'm over here like, that's dumb. but that's your money. You spend how
Yep.
you want to spend it. You know, when you get to the next, you see there's something else out there that you want more, and you don't have any money. You spent your money on what you wanted at the time. So now
Yeah.
you have to start learning that judgment of what do
Yep.
I truly value the most? Do I value this thing's going to sit on my shelf? And maybe it is. Maybe it is something that's worth it to you. But again,
Yep.
these are those things I would rather her learn those now than when she gets out on her own and suddenly she can't pay her rent, she can't pay her car payment, she can't pay for
Yep.
food. Let's learn it now while it's simple little lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So we've we've not talked about like your coaching program and like what you do as a coach, which I think is hugely important for people to like know what's out there and know like what resources are there. I am somebody that in September of 22, I had a business that failed. We lost like six figures worth of investments from friends and family. I was 25, 30 grand in credit card debt. My wife and I, we were engaged at the time, had to move from Kansas City to St. Louis and move in with my mom and dad because like we couldn't afford to pay rent anymore. We had sold off one of our cars. We're down to one car, like the whole nine yards. And I've over the last 2 years or so, like I've had to do a lot of freaking work to get out of the mindset that I put myself in because of this business failing. And that was just a short period of time. That wasn't like an entire lifetime worth of shit that was like bogged out. I've recently uncovered that there was some lifetime things that then what led me into getting into the rut that I was in so quickly. But you and I both know Mike Kitko. He's one person who has helped me like get out of that rut and like really realize like a lot of like the internal voices and internal things that I was going through. And another thing is like my wife and I go to a church that like very much like is we like to say we go to business class on the weekends that happen to have the church involved because it's
There you
very
go.
much like the sermons and everything are set up in that way. And so for me, like I never realized how important it was to go through this work of like really trying to figure out some of these inner things that have like hold you back. And I'm looking at my notes here. Like I have some of these questions prepared. It's like, what were the pivotal moments that transform your mindset from unsure to unstoppable? Is like the question here. And so like that's a lot of what you do for entrepreneurs. And so like, I guess the really what I'm going to ask, like, what are some of the things that you work through with people in order to get them to go through that phase?
Yeah, it's a lot of it really is just separating yourself, I think, from the events that happen in your life. Because what happens is so many of us will go through finding out that we were adopted. We go through having an alcoholic father. We go through getting arrested. We go through a divorce. We go through getting fired. We go through losing a business, quote unquote failing, and then we in turn make that mean something about us. It means we're trash. It means we're no good. We're not capable. We're not we're just dumb, whatever, however you define that in your brain's going to spin it its own little way. But then we
Mm-hmm.
put that label on ourselves. We take on this identity of I'm this failure. I am no good. And we're not, and it has nothing to do with us as a human being. These are just events that
Right.
happen in our life. These are just, consequences, or these are things that have happened based on some choices that we made. And the one thing I always like to try and tell people is you made the best possible choice you knew how to in that moment. You know,
Yeah.
now a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, you can look back and say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that was dumb. But you didn't know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody sits at home going like, how can I fuck up my life today? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody sits there and just thinks, how can I destroy my business today? None of us do.
Yeah.
Where every single decision we make, we think in that moment is the absolute best. It's like, dude, this is it. Even if we know maybe it's not perfect, even if we know on some level in the back of our minds, like, I know this is wrong, but you still honestly believe that's the best thing for you because that's why you move forward and that's why you do it. So it's really helping people learn to separate that and start reframing, their belief system about themselves, their identity, letting go again of what's happening in their lives and just
Mm-hmm.
rebuilding their belief in them first and foremost, and then just start looking at it more from a slightly disconnected way of, okay, I'm just making some choices, and then these are the things that are happening because of those choices. And if this isn't what I wanted, it just means I need to make some different choices. It means nothing about me as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of times for people, you and I are having this conversation. We're very much having this conversation in the sense of like it's a lot of times you just have to untrain your mind. You just have to do this. You just
Mm-hmm.
have to get yourself out of this mindset. You have to separate yourself from the events that happen in life. And we're having this conversation because we've both been through that process. I'm actively going through a lot of that process. And so like I know some of the ways, and I don't know all of them, but I know some of the ways that are like helping me get to that point of doing a lot of that. But somebody listening may think like, okay, James is saying separate yourself from all this or don't let those things define you. But a lot of times the question is like, how? Like, what is some of the work that somebody can begin to do to get themselves to a point like if somebody came to you as a potential coaching client and you decided to
Mm-hmm.
yourself like they aren't ready to work with me yet, here's some of the things that they need to do in order for me to feel that they're ready to work with us, like what would that process look like for this person?
Yeah. So for me, if they're thinking about trying to make a change and they want to make a change or they want to potentially work with me, a lot the very first thing is they have to take full responsibility for everything that's happened in their life. Everything good, bad, or ugly. They can't say, well, it's my dad's fault, it's my mom's fault, it's society's fault, it's their fault, whatever. Because as long as we keep pointing the finger out there, nothing can change.
Right.
And that's not to say that things don't happen that suck, and that we have, for the most part, no control over. Because I mean, I didn't have any choice in becoming adopted. I didn't have any choice in my dad being an alcoholic, but I had the choice
Hmm.
once I became aware of those situations on how to, interpret them, how I was going to respond to them, and how I was going to move forward after that. So, very first and foremost, you got to take responsibility for yourself. And then from that point, to me, it's a lot of just starting to build little habits. So a big part of my transformation was I ran my very first marathon. That process of going from somebody who thought running, when I started my running journey, it all started with seeing a medal on a buddy's wall. He had a little medal on his wall. I'm like, hey, what's that from? And he's like, I ran a 5K. I'm like, well, how far is 5K? Because I didn't know what that
Yeah.
was. He's like, 3.1 miles. And I'm like, you ran 3.1 miles for fun? Are you fucking stupid? I just thought it was like the dumbest thing ever. Like,
Yeah.
why? Why would you do that? But ego kicked in, and I was in a stage of my life where I was looking for something to get a little bit more workout. I wasn't really a gym kind of guy, but I thought, running could be something cool. So that ultimately led me into running, which led me to get my, first medal for a marathon, because most 5Ks don't give medals. This guy just happened to find one at the time that did. Um, and through this 4-month process of getting up like 5 days a week and going out for runs and having to run when I was tired, having to run when it was raining outside or when it was cold outside, and just starting to build that new identity that I am somebody that shows up when the work is hard. I still show up and I still do it. And this is how we start to transform that mindset, that even though things are challenging, I can still do this, and
Yeah.
that's where a coach comes into place, and it's very helpful. Or a mastermind, like, you and I are part of together, having that supportive community and those people around you. So on those moments that you are down, they can kind of help nudge you, to get through some of that. But at the end of the day, it still all comes down to you, because that's something I always have to think about myself. If I don't have an accountability partner, I'm the only one that knows if I showed up or didn't show up. But
Hmm.
for me, I'm going to show up because I know there's other things I want in my life. And if I just keep saying, nope, I'm not going to show up, I'm not going to show up, nobody will know, I'm not going to get the life that I want. And so it's just through that daily repetition of doing little things. It doesn't have to be a marathon. So if
Yeah.
you're listening to this or watching this and saying, I don't want to run a fucking marathon, you don't have to. It's just
Yep.
setting daily little habits that reinforce that new belief system that I show up and I do the work. That's really what
Yeah.
it comes down to.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things like as you're talking, I'm thinking of like my fitness journey has been something that's difficult for me. I just brought on a coach who like is helping me through that because it's been difficult for me to maintain that, and I needed somebody to help keep me accountable and everything. But one of the things that like I've began to develop in my mind is like no matter what, I am going to show up to the gym this day. And that's it. That's the only requirement I'm giving myself is to show up to the gym and work out. It could be I only have time because it's you manage your own time as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and like or really anybody like out if you even if you're employed outside of your working hours you own the rest of your time and
Yeah.
but it was not, I'm going to go in and do all these reps. Like he's got reps he wants me to do and all that stuff. But like there's days that like if I look at it and I'm like, I can't get all these workouts in, I'm at least showing up to the gym. And even if I'm only walking on the treadmill for 5-10 minutes and then I got to bounce after there, I'm doing the work to at least show up to the gym. And so that's something that like I'm beginning to do because again, it's like you get so far into your mind of like this end goal of like I want to do a marathon or I want to be this fit and shape person or whatever. It's like you just got to do the work, like heads down, do the work. Even if some days you can't do the work 100%, go in and do the work at 5% or 10% just for the concept of doing the work. And that means that then when things become really hard to do the work, it's going to be like a no questions asked to go in and actually do the work and then do them at the full capacity that you need to because you've just been doing the repetition up until then.
Yeah. Yeah. Because seriously, just showing up is the hardest part. Because I mean, you think about it, most of us like to get the workouts in the morning. So it's like getting yourself out of bed. Oh man, I got to
Mm-hmm.
get my workout clothes on. I got to go to the gym. I got to do all these little things to get there. But once you get there, like I said, 9 times out of 10, once you get there, you're going to do the workout. Maybe it's not
Yep.
as long as you thought you would hope it would be, but you're going to do something like, well, I'm here now. Might as well do the darn thing.
Yep.
So yeah, just
Yeah.
just training yourself just to get up and do those things over and over and over again. And I'd love to try and find little challenging things where you recognize that, oh man, this is going to suck, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because again, I'm that person that shows up and I'm that person that's going to do the hard thing. And it just reinforces that belief in yourself. So then when something comes up that you're not expecting, you're like, you know what? Hey, wait a minute. I'm that person that shows up and I'm the person that can push
Yeah.
through that. And there's always some times where it's not in your best interest to push through something and you do need to step back, but that comes with that mental awareness, and that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, just knowing who you are, that I show up and I'm going to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, James, I know we're getting close here to time. So, for anybody who's looking to get in touch with you, like, what's the best way? I'm looking at your Facebook profile right now, and I love the intro. It says, "I help you move from can I do that to fuck yeah, I just did that." So, if anybody's
There
trying
you
to
go.
get from can I do that to fuck yeah, I just did that, like, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, so Facebook is where I'm leaning a little more heavily lately. Instagram is, of course, the one of the favorites for most people, but I just don't like the freaking algorithm over there. So if you're an Instagram fan, sorry, man. I'm still working on that one. So you'll see me there a little bit. And I got something on TikTok, but Facebook, Instagram, any of those at the real James Dunn. You can find me there. That's my handle on all three of those platforms. Those are the most easy way to connect with me.
Awesome, awesome. Well, James, thanks again for hopping on today. For those who are listening, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review so we can continue to produce more episodes like this. Please also share our episode online and tag James in it so we can get more exposure to his coaching program and helping people get from can I do this to fuck yeah, I did that. And what James' unfair advantage is. But until next time, this is your unfair advantage.